And welcome to the Cheap Seats. This is your weekly English Premier League show. This week we are talking about the transfer window ratings. We did a show on the top four and how well they've done, or how badly they've done. And now we're going to go do the other four teams that matter, i.e. my team called Arsenal, because they didn't make it into the top 7 or top 8. So we're going to have to call them a team that matter because just the way it is. So
they matter to you.
Yeah, well, they matter to a lot of people on the African continent because somehow Arsene Wenger and Thierry Henry dominated the league in a period where the rest of Africa was opening up.
When you get hoodwinked, you get hoodwinked. It's just that simple, you know. A scam is a scam.
Yeah. So if you want to catch our top 4 show, please do so. It's posted on our YouTube website. Looking at down the log, the first team that we probably going to need to talk about is Leicester because they finished 5. Cyrus, from a Leicester perspective, how would you rate this transfer window? There's that sneaky Ademola Lookman signing they brought in on transfer deadline day when you were like, oh, now they look like a very strong team.
Leicester are a very interesting bunch because as much as I absolutely have a soft spot for them, they are former champions and not that long ago. I look at the team and I think they should be doing better than they are. They've got really good players in a lot of key positions, but some of their guys have regressed over the years. So like somebody like Soyuncu was just sensational when he was sort of first doing his thing at Leicester. And now he's looking like just an average, sort of centre back. And then injuries have played their part and all of that. But I do think that the signings of players like Yannick Vestergaard will be really important for Leicester. He's one of those defenders. When I looked at him, I thought, how crazy that Southampton let go of Virgil van Dijk and also find another man mountain to be their centre-back in Vestergaard. And he's got similar traits in terms of being able to dominate aerially and is a very good communicator. Leicester bringing in Ryan Bertrand was also a good deal because that was a free transfer. Patson Daka as well, our Zambian brother, good to see him come in. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Bukari Sumare, who is also a fantastic player. But I think the Lookman signing could be one of the most important. And in a way, and I hope it doesn't become this, he could be the new Damari Gray for them, in the sense that very talented sort of wing player who can get up and down the pitch, cause some problems, but then at the end of the day, fizzle out and not necessarily give you anything. It's possible that could happen. And I think Leicester's business has been fairly good because they've also managed to keep hold of the players that they needed to. Dennis Pratt, I think, was the biggest of the outgoings. So nothing really too hectic for them. So Brendan Rodgers' team has got a really good squad. I would rate their transfer business as being about, let's call it a 6.5. Primarily because I think Vestergaard is really potentially that good a centre-back signing for them. Because, I mean, as much as Wahid is a Man United guy, surely when you see the likes of Johnny Evans, you think, should be a walk in the park today. We're playing these guys. It's not as if he's the most dominant centre-back. And that's where I think Leicester really needed to sort of shore things up and fill things out. They've got a really great team otherwise.
Dean, Leicester managing to keep hold of James Maddison in a window where big names were being thrown around and big numbers were being thrown around must have been a good piece of business for them, and also to add Lookman when both Barnes and Maddison somehow got injured last season.
I mean, I think the Leicester, like Cyrus said, the Leicester business, they always conduct their transfer windows well. They always buy early, they try and get the guys in, and they're always trying to address the issues which they have. I think in terms of a squad, they look good. In terms of their transfers in, it's good people that they've brought in. That Patson Daka, I thought, they're gearing up for the Vardy leaving, so he's looking at Iheanacho and Daka up front. Lookman is a great signing. I think he looked great at Fulham last season, and I think he's one of those that can really kick on. I think the problem now with Leicester is they're just not really putting it together on the pitch at the moment. I know it's only been 3 games in the Premier League so far, but I think there's just something not quite gelling there at the moment. They're kind of lacking that kind of flair that they normally have from a Leicester team. They're just not doing Leicester things, and that could just be start of the season rust. Obviously, other teams are really kicking it into gear in the first 3 games and staying undefeated.
You just scored 3 goals, dude. It's 3 goals.
It's fine. I'm gonna take it. No, but I think the Leicester squad will always do well because I think they have owners which address the needs in the right time. So from a Leicester perspective, I think they did well to hold on to Maddison, especially when Arsenal come knocking. But I mean, Maddison's probably very grateful he didn't go to that shambles. So yeah.
Wow, that shambles. Where you had one last thing that you wanted to say on Leicester?
Yeah, look, it's not an uncontested league like in Germany, but Leicester have become the Premier League's version of Dortmund. Just a club who have become very good at buying young players, developing, and allowing themselves to sort of be a stepping stone to bigger clubs, but at the same time being really competitive themselves. I know Dortmund have gone one better and actually been really competitive and ended up winning things, but Leicester are sort of like looking to play in that sort of sphere where they're buying young, promising players, developing and moving them on. So I think when you look at Leicester, a lot of their success might be buying players who might not necessarily be household names like Bubaku Samare, not necessarily a household name, but one day he's going to be. He's going to be really good. Tielemans as well, and another success factor for them would be keeping on to those players for a year extra, for a year longer, and building towards maybe winning another cup here or there.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about, the Leicester scouting department is one of the best, I think. They just somehow find a way to get these guys in. But another department that managed to work its way out is the department that is run by Daniel Levy, that team called Tottenham. They managed to keep Kane Wahid. What would you give them from a transfer window perspective? Is Kane that big a number?
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Because they stood firm. They stood firm, and they wouldn't be bullied by a prima donna player who was throwing his toys out the cot trying to get a move. So 10 out of 10 to Daniel Levy for sticking to his guns and not selling. I think if there's a loser at Tottenham in terms of this transfer window, it's Harry Kane himself and how he's conducted himself in this transfer window. I think that he put some golden handcuffs on himself, and I've talked about those before. And he's come out of the situation not looking great. I think he hasn't done himself any favors. And we compare and contrast that to Jack Grealish, who moved from his boyhood club, from the club at which he was adored to a bigger club, and he did that. I'd like to say in the right way, not burning any bridges. When he signed his contract, he knew that he might move one day, so inserted a buyout clause in his contract. He did his club well. His club got the money that they needed to sort of look for better players to replace him, and he did cash in. Yeah, and he did well, and I think so. So looking at it, I think Tottenham have done really well. They've got some really good players in to bolster the squad. I think Christian Romero has aided the defense, and they've got quite a bit of money from their outgoings as well. They've got Alderweireld, Rose, all off the books, and I think that's really good business. So I think from a Spurs perspective, I think they've done really, really well.
Dean, you never thought Wahid would say 10 out of 10. I was surprised, like you.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't give ourselves 10 out of 10. I'd say I'd give us about 7, if I'm honest. I think that, again, the glaring hole in that team now, obviously holding on to Kane was a great thing to do, and it just changes our entire transfer window and the look of our team for the next 12 months. But I think that midfield and that playmaker is still that missing piece of the puzzle we just don't have. We just don't have it, and that's what we need to go and that's what I really wanted us to go and get yesterday. We inquired about Neves. Apparently Wolves just put the phone down. We looked at Traore. We just apparently submitted £30 million. They said, thanks for coming, but no thanks.
They wanted 40. Why are you submitting 30 when they wanted 40?
Because it's Daniel Levy. What did you expect?
Looking for a deal.
Yeah, I think the one good thing is, and this is the part I'm really proud of, that Spurs have made a difference, is we signing youngsters. So we signed that Bryan Gill from Sevilla with the swap deal with Lamela. We signed not Ismail Assar, but Pape Sarr from Metz in France, and sent him back on loan, and he's looking like he's meant to be one of the prospects going forward. So we're investing in youth, and that's the difference from previous Tottenham transfer windows that I've seen. So I think Paratici's doing a good job. I don't think we have a squad. Obviously, don't have a squad that's going to challenge for the Premier League, but I think we're definitely in a position now to challenge for top 4, or at least come close. I think at least.
Okay.
Can I please come in there?
Yes, Cyrus.
Not to rain on your parade or even to rain on Wahid's here. I do agree with you in terms of the rating you've given Tottenham's business. I think holding on to Kane was vital if you weren't going to sell him. But if you were going to sell him, you were obviously going to try and get the absolute maximum out of that deal. And I think that's what Levy was trying to do. He held all the cards there. I totally agree with you. I also think that Paratici's job has proven to be hugely difficult because it's Tottenham. How many times did we see players say, I want to play in the Champions League, I don't want to be at Tottenham? And that's a massive problem. And that then says that the pressure is really on Nuno to get these guys to do something. Win the Carabao Cup, win the FA Cup, just get to the final of that, any of that stuff.
Sorry,
we've seen what attractive football does to Arsenal, and no, but I've been saying this for years. And to use Arsene Wenger's quote against him, every man thinks he's got the most beautiful wife at home. You can think that you play the best and most attractive football, but the problem here is it's about results, and Spurs need to get more results, and that way they'll be able to attract bigger name players. But Paratici's job really has to be about trying to get the next generation of very good players in. And that's where you've got to shop. So when you're shopping for Neves and Wolves are saying no, it says a lot about where Wolves think you are as opposed to where you think you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very interesting.
Just a disclaimer. I think Adama Traore is awful, so I don't think that's a massive issue to not get him. I think he's a terrible footballer.
And the thing is, Steven Bergwijn's actually having a great start to the season.
Bergwijn. Really love Bergwijn. He's got everything that Spurs need, and they need to back him. Yeah. He is a far more effective player than the outgoing god of the crazy skill
Don't
trick.
say Lamela. He's a hero. He's a cult hero.
This guy's a goal and got a red card in the same game, and you guys think
exactly.
But
he's amazing.
It says everything you need to know about Tottenham. They're not aiming for the top. They're happy to see a Rabona goal and be like, look, that was incredible. We should build a statue, maybe one as good as Man City's for their star players.
Fair enough.
Oh, okay. Now let's move on to Eastern Europe. Oh, sorry, no, East London, where West Ham are. Cyrus, they watched Euro 2020, and they were like, "Ooh, I want that from Eastern Europe, and I want that from Eastern Europe." That's Vlasic and Král. It's looking like David Moyes has a plan. Yeah, it's a strategy.
Let me say something. You cannot judge a team for going to a specific league and market and saying, I'm going to find value there and I'm going to bring it over. Because lest I remind you, a certain Arsene Wenger came to England and raided all of the stocks out of France, and everybody was like, oh, do you just buy from France? I think what West Ham are doing is very good business for them. They know exactly where they'll find some really talented players who will give them what they're looking for in terms of steel, in terms of guile in certain cases, and they're not going to overpay. That is the critical thing. The French realized that when the English come over, they've got a checkbook and you can just go for it. And West Ham are like, well, if we're going to go, let's go to CSKA Moscow and get Vlasic and see what happens. 33 mil is it's not peanuts, but at the same time, it's not the 50 or 60 that it could have been if they bought, sort of a bigger name player. But I mentioned Kurt Zouma a little earlier, and I think that's going to be one of the key signings for this West Ham team, because he really is a Premier League quality defender who's won trophies in the biggest competitions in Europe. And he's been at a club like Chelsea where winning is bred into that system. And that's what a lot of these teams are wanting to see more of. I think where West Ham fell short a little bit was that they probably wanted Jesse Lingard more than Vlasic. And I think if they'd managed to get him, it would have been the catalyst they'd need to take another step forward. However, keeping Craig Dawson, really good move for them. Alex Kral, well, we'll see what we get. You know, suit checkers and the like have proved that they know what they're doing when it comes to scouting. But I will say this. The best thing that has happened is David Moyes has become the David Moyes that we saw at Everton. A really good coach. He's managing to get the best out of players who sometimes are really talented but don't necessarily live up to that. Said Benrahma could be one of the absolute steals if he carries on the way he's been playing this season. And Mikel Antonio should never have been played as a striker. But Moyes has just converted him into one of the more effective players in the league. And he did that with one player that Man United thought they could do the same thing with, one of the biggest afros that the Premier League had ever seen. So Moyes sees talent, utilizes it in the way that it needs to be, and I think he's just doing that with the scouting that they're doing. So I think that their business, I'd say a 7.5 maybe, but seven.
Wahid, I know you don't like David Moyes, but can you see that 7.5?
Yeah, I think with dithering Dave, what's important is that he's not the manager. I think that appointing David Moyes as a head coach is far more up his alley than making him manager. He's not good in the transfer window when he's in charge of things. Sorry to put it this way, but he shut the bed at United, and I don't think he's in charge of transfers at West Ham, and that's a really good thing from his perspective. What he's really good at is, as Cyrus said, working with players, making his team greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what David Moyes is really, really good at. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him at Man United because Man United don't need that type of manager. They need a manager who's they need a manager who's going to win the league, not a manager who's going to get the best out of average players. Though with the squads we've had for the last few years, maybe that is the type of manager we need. But the less said about that, the better. so they've done well. Raiding Eastern Europe is not new. Premier League clubs have been doing that for many years. In the 90s, Premier League clubs would go and raid Eastern Europe, Sweden, Denmark, all those sort of places to try and find a bit. Yeah, to try and find a bit of value. I mean, United famously or infamously went and signed Karol Poborski on the back of a good Euro 96, which is the reason I say do not buy players on the back of a good Euros.
Yeah.
So it's not unfounded to do what West Ham have done, but it does sometimes pay dividends. So it's a good window. As Cyrus said, I think that Kurt Zuma is maybe their icing on the cake and might be a little bit transformative for them in terms of the defense. Going forward, as long as they're not forced to play Antonio as a striker, I think they've done well to change the look of that attack. Jesse Lingard, I think it would have been good for all parties involved for him to move on, but potentially he just wanted to be part of something special at United as we're going to win the league with Viva Ronaldo.
Okay, now they're winning the league with Viva Ronaldo. Now to a team that Ronaldo tormented for his entire time in the league. That is Arsenal. Guys, I don't know where to start, but my number is a 4.5 for our transfer business, and I'll tell you why. I'll give them a 6 for the incomings, even though the players aren't necessarily A-grade quality players. The key to this is that there's a strategy and there's a plan. They're younger than 25. You're banking on an upside. The problem is you paid too much for guys. We needed those guys. We filled positions of need. The only problem was that we paid too much. And I think if for a team like West Ham that got players that they wanted and it's a 7.5, I would discount Arsenal to a 6 for players coming in. The biggest issue is what you did with the players going out. And the problem is that the players who are completely off the books are Luiz, Willock, and Willian. 3 players. You got 25 million for Willock. You got money in for Xhaka that you didn't want, and you thought Xhaka was worth 20 million, and they decided to keep him and give him an extension. Then he got a red card. But then the questions that I have are: Ainsley Maitland-Niles is still in the squad as a 4th choice right back. Kolasinac is still playing, not even in the squad. He played against Manchester City when we thought he'd be one guy you wanted to ship off. Eddie Nketiah is still there. Like I'm sitting there going, guys, what's the plan with these guys? On top of that, we played Kolasinac at centre back, but we let William Saliba go out on loan. The plan around Mikel Arteta, I'm not so sure. However, for the outgoings, it's a 2. For the incomings, it's a 6. It's a 4, 4.5 at best if you want to be optimistic. The only good thing is that they sign players under 25, so there's going to be some resale value going forward. I just don't know if they're going to get any resale value from Ben White at 50 million or even Aaron Ramsdale, because I don't think much. But I like Nuno Tavares. I like Martin Odegaard. I think that's one I wanted for Arsenal to go and get. I like Albert Sambi Lokonga. I think he's the guy who should be playing instead of Xhaka.
I really like him.
Yeah, but the pricing and whoever was doing all the metrics and all the valuations his position needs to be looked at, because I never liked it. I kind of felt like, guys, come on, we're paying too much for guys that we could have gotten if you waited. Like Ben White, if you waited a season, you probably would have gotten for slightly cheaper. But it's an Arteta strategy. You kind of see that you're doing an NBA style. We're playing with the kids. It's a rebuild. I don't even think we're going to make top 8 this year. I don't even think the squad is top 8 in the league. I think Aston Villa have a much better squad than Arsenal. And that's why I say it's a 4 and a 4.5, because the team did not improve. The squad did not improve. All we lost were hard men, Premier League experienced guys. So the one way to beat Arsenal is be physical. If you can be physical against these guys, it's a soft center.
So you mean the same strategy that's been there for over 15 years?
Yes, same. Nothing. But under Unai Emery, it was a little bit like you had some guys who were like, okay, cool, we could do that. But But yeah, so for me, it's a 4.5. I just don't get. I see the plan. I just don't agree with the way they went about it.
My thing with Arsenal is there were offers on the table for some of these guys. Like you had an offer on the table for Xhaka. There was an offer on the table for Ainsley Maitland-Niles from Everton, from what we heard. And they say no. So if you're going through a squad rebuild and you're trying to buy youngsters, £1 million is better than no pounds, Yes. And that's my thing. Take the money.
For Olivier Giroud.
Exactly.
You would
take
say
the money,
10, but they took what?
Take the money, buy Bitcoin. It's worth quadruple what it'll be next year, and then you can buy Ronaldo if you want. So that's the part, and obviously just joking around, but I think that's the part that confused me about Arsenal. You're saying, okay, we're investing in youth, and you can see the plan, but part of that is also getting rid of the guys that when an offer comes in, it's no longer sell. You don't need to sell Xhaka for 20. Sell him for 10. If there's someone's coming knocking, sell him. Dean, I think that's the point.
Dean, yeah. I want to add to what I said to you earlier, and this was also a point that was meant for Arsenal as well, because Tottenham had a better season than Arsenal did last season in terms of where they finished in the league and the general achievement in football. But the biggest issue with Arsenal as well is you're assuming they'd be able to attract the quality of players that they want. So selling Xhaka doesn't mean you'll get a Xhaka replacement. You'll just have the money to buy somebody. And I think this is where they've overpaid for certain players, because the guys they wanted were really expensive. And when they went shopping at other places, they were like, well, give us this. And the guys and Brighton were like, I can't believe we got them. And I think that where Arsenal really find themselves in a very tricky space is when you look at it in terms of what the movement is going forward, where do they go and get their big quality signings? Is it Belgium? Is it the Netherlands? Is it France? And if so, because a lot of eyes are on France now, they should have been signing the likes of a Camavinga, but they don't have the same pulling power because they're not playing in the Champions League. So I think that's where Arsenal's biggest problem is they don't have the ability to recruit the level of players that they wish they could.
But Cyrus, here's my thing. If you look at the guys that Arsenal recruited outside of Odegaard, and maybe Nuno Tavares, because I thought Nuno Tavares was really good at left back, because they went to a lot of left backs. You could have gone, and if you look at around the league, there are guys who went, clubs who you could say have a lesser pulling power than Arsenal, that got better players. How did Enoch Mwepu, who I think is a star in that position, and Brighton have too many defensive midfields, how do you let a guy like that go off the ball? You know, how do you not consider bidding for an Emerson when it's only 30 million and you're paying 16? You could have gone for an Emerson at Barcelona or done a swap deal with Bellerin at Barcelona. Or for instance,
But he came to the bigger club in North London.
but a Yannick Vestergaard. Yannick is over 20, is over 25. I get that, but he's the type of guy you need to partner with Gabriel. I get the whole homegrown thing, but you had so many kids in and around the team. You're keeping Ainsley, you're keeping all these guys. You could have gone for a Vestergaard, who's a little bit of a hard man, and that's where my issue is with Arsenal. Wahid, is that how do you allow smaller? No, the problem is that there were specific targets that Mikel wanted, and he got them. He got all of these guys. The only problem was whoever's advising him is missing the point from a market perspective. Like you say, West Ham look at Eastern Europe, Leicester look at France. The question is, who is advising Mikel in terms of these player signings? Because I look at Leicester, I'd have taken Sumare any day. He's going to sit on a Leicester bench and not going to get any game time. He's the type of guy I need to replace Granit Xhaka. It's just odd. It's just weird as to where is our scouting department going, and to a certain extent, it's this fixation of trying to be a Manchester City-esque team where you want ball players, you want guys who can play out the back, you want guys who can move the ball, like Tomiyasu. I love him. He's great from a YouTube video. I think he's
You've watched one YouTube video and he's the greatest defender you've ever seen in the Italian league.
I've been in love with this guy ever since I watched him in a YouTube video.
I love Tomiyasu.
I was like, wow, he's done all these things? Well,
I've never heard of him before.
I'll show you a compilation video of Eric Dyer, and he'll be the best defender you'll ever see in your entire life based off a YouTube video.
Exactly. But my issue with that was, if he's this good and he's so good and everyone says no, there's no bad word said about him. Why haven't any other teams in the Premier League or any other teams in Europe said, hey, there's a guy at Bologna. We all know Italy's a really great defensive league. Why? And now that's my question.
Spurs tried to sign him, just remember.
Not tried.
But yet, Cyrus,
they ended up with
him. A few months ago, I asked you that exact same question of Thomas Partey. Nobody else was trying to sign him. You had a free run at that player. So yes, I get that he's looked good for Atletico Madrid at times. Yeah, we watch him on big nights in the Champions League. I don't know. I don't watch La Liga as much as you guys, but looking at him at Arsenal, and like you almost see the player that nobody else was interested in. And like you wonder who's advising Arsenal on these players. And I look at Arsenal, and I'm thinking right now, do you know what they remind me of? They remind me of Louis van Gaal's Man United. A very, very, very confused approach to transfers. Getting players out for the sake of it, bringing players in for the sake of it, almost looking at transfers as quantity over quality. Like, okay, if I sign 6 players for 160 million pounds, it's like throwing shit at the wall and hoping that it sticks. Like that's what you're doing there at the Emirates. It's like there's no other way to describe it. It's such a haphazard, confused approach to transfers. But I must be honest, I don't even think that's the biggest issue at Arsenal. I just truly think that Mikel Arteta is so well out of his depth there that he needs to be let go, and you need to get a manager who's maybe not a mini Pep or Pep's assistant or the guy who laid the cones for Pep, whatever you want to call him, but someone who's just going to be a little bit more pragmatic in his approach to getting Arsenal not back to the Champions League, but back to the top half of the table. Like, honestly, that's honestly what you need right now. And it's Mikel Arteta is not going to be that man. He's not that type. Maybe this is going to be played to me in a few months' time. But as it stands, everything I've seen has not shouted to me that this is the man to get Arsenal back up the table.
Wahid, right now, I'm earmarking that November international break as the time they fire him. He's got 8 games between, starting with Norwich and ending with Liverpool, or before Liverpool, and that's the end of that international break. He's got 8 games to change. So I know it's 3 games, and we're all going crazy, but he's got 8 games to change and show us what he wants, because some of the guys he signed aren't going to start. That's the wild thing about this. You're like, we're buying for the future, but I'm like, dude, your job's
Buy
on
for the
line.
present.
Yeah.
Your job's on the line.
The problem in Paul,
No, it's not.
mid-season, you fire your boss, and you're gonna have a more embarrassing search for a manager than even Spurs had. And
Yes.
I don't know, I can't think of a name who's going to want to jump at that Emirates job unless you're gonna go the Sam Allardyce route, which I beg you
Gus
don't.
Hiddink. Gus Hiddink.
Sam Allardyce will have
is a-
hit the jackpot. Sam
Frankie
Allardyce
de
will hit the
Boer.
jackpot.
That's the guy that you should get.
No. But that's the problem. It's you've given him 150 million, and now's the time for him to show. Yes, the first 3 games of the season, but he needs to show. Like, if Tommy Yosu makes an error leading to a goal, when somehow those stats said he didn't make an error leading to a goal in 2 years, it's over.
Which
It's done.
which YouTube video did you watch?
I know.
No errors.
I
Guys,
do think
the
though.
spam I get from Arsenal fans, this is wild.
But I do think, and Paul, I kind of agree with you, but I do think that there's something that you shouldn't miss here, and that is Mikel Arteta. What is his actual goal? What is it that the Arsenal board have told him? You'll be safe if you get us to this. Is it 10th place? Is it 8th place? Is it a cup run? What is it that they're going to be like, fine, Mikel, we're happy? Because in essence, this is a project, right? And when you've got a project, that requires time. And I do think that that's one of the biggest issues that we're currently facing is no one seems to know what the onus is on Arsenal at the moment. Is it that Mikel Arteta has been told, you won the FA Cup, we're happy, we'll spend that money? And I did say this to you, and Paul, when it happened, I did say this. The worst thing to happen to Arsenal was winning that FA Cup, because it papered over all sorts of cracks, and those cracks are starting to become gaping chasms at the moment. And I think that the thing here is, I don't think that Mikel Arteta will get sacked. I think he'll pull the club up to about 10th place, and then it will just be, let's see what happens from here. Because they're
Will
probably
he be pulling the club to 10th place, or is that the caliber of the squad he has?
I think it's
interesting
the
thing,
caliber
because
of the squad
I think that's it. That in essence, you'll have somebody like Emile Smith-Rowe, who suddenly does the things that Arsenal fans want him to do, and Martin Odegaard, and they manage to start scoring some goals. Once that starts happening, because that's Arsenal's biggest problem right now, is that you just haven't been able to find the back of the net. Once you start doing that fairly regularly, you'll shoot up that table, because there's a lot of teams who don't have some of the creative attackers, players that you guys have. Even Nicola Pepe is going to score a few goals. So I think that's going to be the next thing.
That is true. But on that awkward and somber note, let's close out the show. Thank you very much, guys, for joining and coming through. Remember, we did the first part with the top 4 teams, the teams that actually truly matter to the title. And then we did the other teams who are going to be fluttering around and are part of the Twitter mentions. But outside of that, thank you very much, guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the international break. I don't know what you guys do during this time, but we'll be back next week with a date night drip episode. And that's going to be quite a cool one. But remember,
I'm ready for the date night drip. Yeah, look at this.
Well,
so the tablecloth on the date night.
Yeah.
If I actually had to go on a date with this on, I'd be sleeping at my parents' home tonight.
Okay, it's good to know that your wife has boundaries and is setting really well. Yeah, but thank you very much, guys, for joining. Till next week, have a good time and goodbye. Le sale, kakafiso.